Sarah stood at the edge of the training yard, the morning sun casting long shadows behind her. The air smelled of dust and sweat, mingling with the distant echoes of boots pounding against the dirt. Around her, the other recruits laughed and joked, a tight-knit group bonded by shared hardship and familiar routines. But Sarah was different, not just because she was the only woman among them, but because she refused to blend in. When the weapons instructor approached the armory, Sarah's heart beat faster. She had spent years dreaming of this moment, preparing for the day she would finally ask for her own rifle. Most recruits waited quietly, accepted what was given, but not her. She stepped forward with quiet confidence and said, "I want a rifle." The words barely left her lips before laughter erupted from the men around her. "Are you serious?" One of them snorted, shaking his head. "You don't even know how to hold a gun properly." "Maybe she wants a toy rifle," another joked, smirking. Their laughter was sharp, echoing off the metal walls and cutting through the thick morning air. Sarah felt their eyes on her, some filled with amusement, others with disbelief. She could feel the weight of every skeptical glance and whispered comment, but she refused to shrink away or apologize for her desire. This wasn't just about wanting a weapon. It was about proving something deeper, something personal. The commander, an older man with a stern but steady gaze, watched from a distance. His eyes scanned the group and then settled on Sarah. Silence fell as he stepped forward, breaking through the noise. "Give her the black Talon," he ordered, his voice calm but firm. A hush spread across the yard. The black Talon was not just any rifle. It was a legendary weapon, reserved only for the best marksmen in the camp. Passed down through years of service, it had earned its name for the deadly precision and power it demanded from its user. The soldiers looked at each other, confusion and surprise mingling on their faces. This wasn't a joke or a test. The commander meant what he said. Sarah's breath caught. She hadn't expected this. Slowly, an armory officer brought the black Talon from its locked case. The rifle gleamed under the sunlight, its dark metal polished and worn from years of use. It felt heavier than any rifle Sarah had seen before. As she took it into her hands, a mixture of fear and determination filled her chest. She felt the weight settle, the cold metal pressing against her palms. This rifle wasn't just a tool, it was a challenge, a symbol of everything she was about to face. Around her, the murmurs grew louder again. Some doubted her. Others were curious. But the commander's decision had shifted the game. Sarah's mind raced. She knew this was her chance, but also the moment she could lose everything. The other recruits would be watching, waiting to see if she would crack under pressure. She had to prove herself not just to them, but to herself. As the training day began, Sarah held the black Talon close. She was no longer just a recruit asking for a rifle. She was the one chosen to wield the camp's most feared weapon. The air was thick with tension, every movement scrutinized. The laughter had faded, replaced by a cautious respect that only the bravest dared show. She tightened her grip, squared her shoulders, and stepped forward. This was just the beginning. The path ahead would be filled with doubt, sweat, and struggle. But Sarah was ready to face it all. Because sometimes, the greatest battles weren't fought on the battlefield, they were fought within. The black Talon was a rifle shrouded in whispers and legend. Soldiers talked about it in hushed tones, speaking of its deadly accuracy and unforgiving recoil. It wasn't a weapon for the faint-hearted or the inexperienced. It was reserved only for those who had earned their place through blood, sweat, and relentless training. When the commander ordered the black Talon handed to Sarah, many thought it was a test, a way to set her up for failure. As she held the rifle for the first time, the weight of it felt different from what she expected. It wasn't just the physical heaviness, but the burden of expectations pressing down on her shoulders. Every scar on the rifle told a story, every scratch a mark of a mission completed. This weapon had history, and now it was hers to carry. The other recruits watched closely, some with skepticism, others with barely hidden curiosity. They whispered about what the commander might be thinking, wondering if this was a mistake. Sarah could feel their eyes burning into her, judging every small movement. Her fingers adjusted around the grip, tentative but determined. This wasn't just a tool. It was a symbol of trust and challenge. The first day with the black Talon was brutal. The rifle's power was unlike anything Sarah had handled before. Its recoil was fierce, pushing against her shoulder with every shot. She missed more targets than she hit, frustration gnawing at her resolve. Sweat dripped down her brow, mixing with the dust and dirt of the training ground. The laughter from the sidelines hadn't completely disappeared, but it was quieter now, replaced by silence and anticipation. The commander didn't offer any encouragement. His eyes were sharp, watching every move she made, calculating. But beneath that stern exterior was a silent understanding. He saw something in Sarah that no one else did. She wasn't just here to handle a rifle. She was here to master it. Hours turned into days. Sarah's muscles ached. Her hands blistered, but she kept coming back. Each morning she arrived before dawn, practicing her aim and stance. She studied the rifle as if it were a living thing, learning its quirks and secrets. The black Talon was demanding, but Sarah was relentless. Slowly, she began to feel a connection forming. The rifle's weight felt less like a burden and more like an extension of herself. Her shots grew steadier, more precise. The target practice lines blurred into one steady focus. The other recruits began to take notice. Quiet conversations stopped when she was near, replaced by nods of respect and hesitant questions. One afternoon, during a particularly tough drill, Sarah faced her greatest test yet. The instructor set up a distant target, one most soldiers wouldn't dare attempt. Her heart pounded as she lined up the shot, breath steadying in her chest. Time seemed to slow as she squeezed the trigger. The rifle cracked through the silence. The bullet struck dead center. The camp fell silent, then erupted into murmurs of disbelief. Sarah's eyes met the commander's, who nodded once, almost imperceptibly. It was the first sign of approval she had received, and it felt like a quiet victory. But Sarah knew this was just the beginning. The black Talon wasn't a weapon to be taken lightly. It demanded respect, skill, and above all, patience. As she prepared for the challenges ahead, she realized that mastering the rifle was more than a test of marksmanship. It was a test of character. The camp was watching now. The laughter had faded, replaced by cautious hope. Sarah wasn't just the woman who had asked for a rifle anymore. She was the one who held the black Talon, the rifle that could change everything. And she was ready to prove that she belonged. The days that followed were some of the hardest Sarah had ever faced. Training with the black Talon was no simple task. It was demanding in every way, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Every morning before dawn, Sarah was already at the training ground, the rifle slung over her shoulder, ready to push herself further. Her muscles ached from hours of practice, and blisters formed on her hands, but she refused to let pain or fatigue stop her. The other recruits watched in silence. The laughter and mocking had largely faded, replaced by something else, curiosity and a grudging respect. Sarah's determination was impossible to ignore. Still, whispers circulated in the mess hall and barracks. Some wondered if she would crack under pressure, if she could handle the rifle's unforgiving recoil, if she could survive the training that awaited her. Sarah knew these doubts were a part of the battle. More than learning to shoot, she had to break down the invisible walls built by those around her. She couldn't let their skepticism define her. Every shot she fired was an answer to the unspoken question, can she really do this? Training was relentless. The black Talon was powerful, and each round tested her strength and control. Sometimes the rifle jerked harshly against her shoulder, causing her to miss targets she was sure she would hit. But Sarah didn't give up. She studied every mistake carefully, adjusting her stance, tightening her grip, learning how to predict the weapon's kickback. Slowly, the rifle began to feel less like an enemy and more like a partner. In the quiet moments between drills, Sarah would sit alone, cleaning the black Talon with meticulous care. She polished the worn metal, checked every mechanism, and ran her fingers along its smooth barrel. It was more than a tool. It was a legacy passed down from soldiers who had fought before her. She thought about what it meant to carry that legacy, to live up to the stories etched into the rifle's very frame. Her nights were restless, filled with dreams of targets missed and missions won. The weight of the black Talon was always there, even when she was asleep. Yet, each morning, she woke determined to get better. One day, during an especially grueling exercise, the commander called the recruits to attention. "Today," he said, his voice steady, "we're pushing beyond limits." The targets were placed farther than ever before, and the conditions were harsh. The wind howled, carrying dust that stung their eyes and throat. Many recruits hesitated, uncertain if the challenge was even possible. Sarah's hands shook as she raised the black Talon. She adjusted for the wind, held her breath, and took the shot. The rifle fired, the bullet slicing through the gusts, and hit the target with near-perfect accuracy. A murmur spread through the group. Some exchanged glances, clearly impressed. Others tried to hide their surprise, but Sarah saw it all. This was the moment she had trained for, the moment she showed that skill and will mattered more than anyone had believed. Even the commander nodded, his usual stern expression softening just slightly. Sarah didn't smile. Instead, she stood taller, knowing that this was only the beginning of the fight for respect. The journey was far from over. Every day brought new challenges, long marches, night drills, weapon maintenance, and mental endurance tests. Sarah's body grew stronger, but so did the doubts from others, creeping back in subtle ways. Yet, she met every challenge head-on. Her fellow soldiers started coming to her with questions, seeking advice on the rifle or asking about her training routines. It wasn't friendship yet, but it was progress. Sarah realized respect was earned in small moments, through consistent effort and quiet strength. When she looked at the black Talon now, it no longer felt like a burden. It was a symbol of what she had fought to become, a soldier who refused to be underestimated, who demanded to be seen and heard. And as the day stretched on, Sarah's confidence grew. She was no longer just a woman who had asked for a rifle. She was becoming one of the best marksmen in the camp. The black Talon was no longer a mystery, but a part of her. She knew the toughest tests were still ahead, but Sarah was ready. The day of the ultimate test arrived quietly, but beneath the calm surface, tension rippled through the camp like a storm waiting to break. Sarah stood among the soldiers, her black Talon resting against her shoulder. Around her, the usual chatter was replaced by an uneasy silence. Everyone knew what was at stake. This wasn't just another drill. It was the moment that could change everything, or shatter it all. The target was set far beyond the range most recruits dared to attempt. The distance was brutal, even for seasoned marksmen. Some glanced sideways at Sarah, wondering if she would back down. She felt their eyes, the weight of their doubt pressing down like a physical force. But she refused to let it shake her. Her breath was steady despite the pounding in her chest. Years of training, endless hours of practice, moments of frustration and triumph, they all came together now. She raised the black Talon carefully, adjusting her aim against the slight breeze. Time seemed to slow as she focused on the distant target, her world narrowing to the sight at the end of the barrel. The silence shattered with the sharp crack of the rifle. The bullet sped through the air, cutting across the wind, and struck the target dead center. For a moment, no one moved. Then slowly, stunned whispers filled the air. Sarah's heart thundered as she lowered the rifle. She looked up and met the commander's eyes. His face was unreadable, but the subtle nod said more than words ever could. The camp had just witnessed something remarkable. Sarah's shot wasn't just about hitting a target. It was about breaking barriers and challenging every expectation placed on her. The other soldiers, some still skeptical, couldn't help but acknowledge the truth. She had done what few thought possible. The distance was considered impossible by many, yet she had proven them wrong with precision and calm. The day wasn't over, but something had shifted. The whispers of doubt gave way to cautious respect. Sarah felt the invisible walls start to crumble. It wasn't just her skill. It was her perseverance that made the difference. Later, as the sun dipped low and cast long shadows over the training ground, Sarah sat alone, cradling the black Talon in her hands. She thought about how far she had come, from the laughter and disbelief of her first day to this moment of quiet triumph. But she also knew the road ahead was far from easy. The rifle was a tool, yes, but the real battle was winning trust and proving herself time and again. The commander approached quietly. "You did well," he said simply. "Not many could have made that shot." Sarah looked up, meeting his gaze. There was no patronizing tone, only respect. "I'm not finished yet," she replied. He nodded. "Good, because this is just the beginning." The camp was changing, slowly but surely. Sarah's success with the black Talon had opened doors, not just for herself, but for others who might follow. The notion that a woman could wield such a weapon with skill and courage was no longer a joke or a curiosity. It was becoming reality. That night, Sarah lay awake, replaying the day's moments over and over. The quiet pride swelling inside her was tempered by the knowledge that challenges remained. There would be tougher missions, harsher tests, and moments when the world would try to push her back. But Sarah was ready. The black Talon wasn't just a rifle anymore. It was a part of her story, a story of resilience, determination, and breaking every expectation placed before her. And as dawn crept over the horizon, she knew one thing with certainty. She was no longer just asking for a rifle. She was claiming her place, shot by shot, in a world that had once refused to see her. The days after the test felt different. The camp, once filled with skepticism and quiet mockery, now buzzed with a new kind of energy, one laced with cautious respect. Sarah noticed it in the way soldiers glanced her way, the subtle nods exchanged when she passed, and the questions that began to reach her lips. It wasn't friendship yet, but it was something more. The barrier she'd been fighting against was cracking. One morning, as Sarah adjusted the black Talon sights, a young recruit approached her hesitantly. "How do you keep your aim so steady?" he asked, eyes wide with genuine curiosity. Sarah paused, surprised. She hadn't expected anyone to ask, much less with such earnestness. "It's more than just steady hands," she replied quietly. "It's about patience, practice, and learning to listen to the rifle, the wind, and yourself." He nodded slowly, absorbing her words. For the first time, Sarah realized that her journey was no longer just about proving herself. It was about inspiring others to believe in what was possible. The commander's presence was a constant reminder that the road ahead was still steep. He watched silently, offering few words, but making it clear that expectations remained high. Sarah knew she had earned respect, but she hadn't earned comfort. Training grew tougher. Longer marches in sweltering heat tested endurance. Night drills in near darkness demanded nerves of steel. Yet through it all, Sarah held her ground. The black Talon was no longer an unfamiliar weight. It had become an extension of her resolve. One afternoon, as the sun beat down mercilessly, Sarah's unit gathered for a briefing. A mission was coming, one that required precision, stealth, and trust. The commander named Sarah team leader, a decision met with stunned silence. Some faces registered surprise, others doubt. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility heavier than any rifle. She wasn't just leading a team, she was leading a statement. Her command would either reinforce the respect she'd earned or unravel it all. In the days before deployment, Sarah spent hours planning, reviewing every detail, every possible outcome. She studied maps, memorized terrain, and drilled her team relentlessly. Her leadership was steady, not loud or commanding, but firm and thoughtful. Slowly, the team began to trust her. They saw past the initial surprise and recognized the skill and dedication that had brought her here. She wasn't a symbol or a novelty, she was their leader. The night before the mission, Sarah stood alone by the campfire, the black Talon resting beside her. The flickering flames cast shadows across her face, reflecting a mixture of determination and quiet anxiety. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the laughter, the doubt, the long hours spent mastering the rifle that had once seemed impossible to handle. Her mind wandered to the soldiers who had laughed when she first asked for a rifle, those who had doubted her ability. She felt no bitterness, only a quiet strength born from overcoming every obstacle they had placed before her. As dawn approached, Sarah knew that the coming mission would test everything she had learned. It would push her limits and demand courage beyond the battlefield. But she was ready. The black Talon was no longer just a weapon. It was a symbol of trust, leadership, and the breaking of barriers. And as the camp stirred to life, Sarah felt something new stirring within herself, a deep confidence that this was her moment, not just to prove herself again, but to lead others into what lay ahead, together. The early morning air was crisp and heavy with anticipation as Sarah led her team toward the mission's starting point. The landscape stretched out before them, a mix of rugged hills and dense woods, perfect for the kind of precision and stealth their objective demanded. Every step Sarah took was measured, every breath controlled. The black Talon felt balanced in her hands, no longer just a weapon, but a trusted companion. Her team moved quietly behind her, their eyes alert, their bodies tense with anticipation. Sarah could feel their unspoken questions and doubts fading away, replaced by cautious confidence. They had trained hard, but now, out here in the field, everything mattered. One mistake could mean failure, or worse. The mission was clear. Locate an enemy outpost deep within the woods, gather intel, and return without detection. It was a test not only of their combat skills, but of their ability to work together under pressure. Sarah's role was critical. Her sharpshooting needed to cover the team's movements and neutralize threats silently and efficiently. As they moved through the underbrush, the sounds of the camp and their own footsteps vanished into the stillness of the forest. Sarah's heart beat steady, but sharp, every sense heightened. She scanned the area constantly, her eyes trained to spot the smallest sign of movement or disturbance. The black Talon rested comfortably against her shoulder, ready for action. Suddenly, a whisper from one of her team members signaled they were close. Sarah slowed her pace, signaling everyone to take cover behind thick trees and large rocks. She crouched low, adjusting the rifle's scope to peer through the dense foliage. There, just beyond a fallen log, was the enemy outpost, a cluster of tents and armed guards moving in slow rotation. Her mind raced through the plan. They needed to gather information, not engage in open combat. Sarah steadied her breathing, then focused the black Talon's sights on the nearest guard. Time seemed to stop. She squeezed the trigger softly. The shot was nearly silent, but deadly accurate. The guard collapsed without a sound. The team moved swiftly, slipping past the distracted guards and into the outpost center. Sarah's eyes never left the scope, ready to cover them as they gathered documents and radio equipment. The tension in the air was thick, every second demanding perfection. Suddenly, a shout broke the silence. Someone had spotted them. The team froze, adrenaline surging. Sarah didn't hesitate. She raised the rifle, taking down another threat before the enemy could react fully. Her teammates rallied, drawing their own weapons, moving in tight formation to push back. The firefight was brief but intense. Sarah's steady aim and calm leadership kept her team focused. Every shot from the black Talon found its mark, providing the cover needed for the team to complete the mission and retreat. As they made their way back through the woods, the weight of what they had accomplished began to sink in. Sarah's team was exhausted but alive, a success that few had expected. The soldiers who had doubted her leadership now looked at her with something like awe. When they returned to camp, the commander met them with a rare smile. "Well done," he said simply. "You led your team with skill and courage." Sarah allowed herself a small nod of satisfaction. She knew this mission wasn't just a victory for her team, but a milestone in her journey. Proof that she belonged, not because she had asked for a rifle, but because she had earned every inch of her place. That night, as she cleaned the black Talon by the flickering light of a lantern, Sarah thought about the path ahead. There would be more challenges, more battles, and more moments when doubt would try to creep back in. But she was ready, because now the rifle was not just a symbol of her fight to be taken seriously. It was a symbol of her strength, her leadership, and the unbreakable spirit that had carried her this far. And no matter what came next, Sarah knew she would face it head-on. The quiet that settled over the camp after the mission felt like a fragile pause between storms. Sarah sat apart from the others, the black Talon resting across her lap, its cold metal a steady reminder of everything she had fought for. The adrenaline of battle had faded, replaced by a heavy silence that pressed against her chest. She wasn't used to moments like this, moments when the world slowed and the weight of what she'd accomplished settled in. Her thoughts drifted back to the early days, when laughter met her request for a rifle, when doubt surrounded every step she took. It felt like a lifetime ago. Now, she was no longer just a recruit fighting for recognition. She was a leader, a soldier with the respect of her team and the commander's guarded approval. But respect came with its own burdens. Word had started to spread beyond the camp. Other units were hearing about the woman who mastered the Black Talon, who led a successful mission against impossible odds. Some responded with admiration, others with thinly veiled resentment. In a world that had long resisted change, Sarah's presence was stirring something dangerous, questions and challenges she hadn't expected. One evening, as she prepared the rifle for the next day's drills, a familiar voice interrupted her. It was Marcus, one of the more outspoken soldiers, who had doubted her from the start. His eyes held a mixture of something new, respect, maybe, but also a challenge. "You've done well," he said quietly, "but don't think this means the easy part's over." Sarah met his gaze steadily. "I never expected it to be easy." He shrugged, half smiling. "Good, because the hardest battles aren't out here in the field. They're in here." He tapped his temple. "In the minds of people who won't let you forget you're different." Sarah nodded. She knew the truth in his words all too well. She wasn't just fighting enemies on the battlefield. She was fighting prejudice, skepticism, and a history that refused to accept her place. That night, as the camp slept, Sarah lay awake thinking about what came next. The mission had proven her skill, but it had also opened new battles, battles of trust, of acceptance, of breaking down walls that ran deeper than any enemy's defenses. The next morning, training resumed with brutal intensity. Sarah pushed herself harder than ever, knowing she had to be more than just good. She had to be exceptional. Every shot fired, every maneuver practiced, was a message to those who doubted her. She wasn't here to fit in. She was here to lead. Her team rallied around her, their confidence growing with each successful exercise. Slowly, the whispers of doubt faded, replaced by quiet conversations about strategy and skill. Sarah saw in their eyes the flicker of something she had longed for, genuine camaraderie. Yet, the shadow of skepticism lingered beyond the camp's borders. Reports came of rival units questioning her leadership, of old guard officers dismissing her achievements as luck or coincidence. Sarah knew that gaining respect outside this camp would be an even tougher challenge. But she was ready. Her fingers traced the worn stock of the Black Talon, feeling the history and power within it. This rifle had become more than a weapon. It was a symbol of her journey, her struggle, and her triumph. And Sarah was determined to carry that symbol forward, no matter what lay ahead, because she had proven, beyond any doubt, that strength isn't just measured by muscle or firepower. It's measured by resilience, courage, and the will to break through every barrier. And Sarah was just getting started. The morning sun cast a golden light over the camp, but Sarah felt the weight of what was coming heavy on her shoulders. Today wasn't just another day of training or patrol. It was a test, one that would push her, her team, and the Black Talon to their limits. Rumors had reached the higher command about a dangerous enemy stronghold, and Sarah's unit was chosen to lead the strike. This mission would decide not only their fate, but Sarah's future as a leader in the military. Her team gathered silently, tension thick in the air. No one doubted the gravity of the task. Sarah looked at each face, some nervous, others determined, but all ready to follow her lead. She felt a fierce pride in their trust. Years ago, many would have laughed at the idea of her commanding a team on such a critical mission. Now, she held their lives in her hands. As they moved out, the forest swallowed their footsteps, the path ahead winding and treacherous. The black Talon was steady in Sarah's grasp, the familiar weight grounding her. Every sound seemed amplified, the snap of a twig, the distant call of a bird, each one a reminder of the danger lurking nearby. Hours passed as they navigated through thick undergrowth, Sarah's mind sharp and focused. The enemy stronghold was close, and they had to strike swiftly. Suddenly, movement, figures emerging from the shadows, weapons raised. The attack was sudden and fierce. Sarah didn't hesitate. Raising the black Talon, she fired precise, controlled shots, each one silencing a threat before it could endanger her team. Her heart pounded, but her hands were steady, her training guiding every decision. The team advanced, their coordination seamless, their confidence buoyed by Sarah's leadership and sharpshooting. The enemy was formidable, but Sarah's strategy and the black Talon's deadly accuracy turned the tide. Slowly, they pushed forward, clearing the stronghold room by room. In the chaos, Sarah spotted the enemy commander trying to escape. Without a second thought, she took the shot, dead center. The battle was over. Exhausted but victorious, the team regrouped. The cheers were quiet, respectful, but Sarah could see it in their eyes, the acknowledgement of her strength, skill, and unbreakable spirit. Back at camp, the news of their success spread like wildfire. The commander summoned Sarah to his office, his expression unreadable. Then he extended his hand. "You've earned your place," he said simply. For the first time, Sarah felt the full weight of victory, not just for herself, but for every woman who had ever been told she couldn't. She looked down at the black Talon, now worn but gleaming in the light. It was more than a rifle. It was a symbol of breaking barriers, of fighting against doubt and rising above it. Sarah knew her journey wasn't over. There would be more battles, more obstacles. But today, she stood taller than ever, because she had turned laughter and doubt into respect and triumph. And nothing could take that away.